All right, let's take a look at version 1.3.0 of OneGrade. So a couple cool things in here as far as features, though we did have a few changes I want to draw your attention to. So first up, scene exposure and scene white balance are the new names for what used to be raw exposure and raw white balance. The names are changed here just to better reflect what the fields are actually doing. The 11th preset in camera was renamed to Rec 2100PQ Smooth Decode. And then finally down in the trim section, we've renamed the exposure item Exposure Trim. To be clear, the trim section is a bit of a grab bag right now. This will change in future versions as we promote and demote some of these items within the user interface. Now, as far as new features, super excited about base grade. We'll take a look at that in just a second, but we also have a bias control, which is always active. We have the ability to bypass entire sections. So you can just flick on and off these items right here. We can export LUTs of the item that we create, which is great for archival purposes. We have a feature to check the input of the current clip you have. This will be getting more features as time goes on to better reflect the sort of requirements that our plugin has for your footage. And then finally, we added a GPL 3.0 license to the source repository. So as far as using the new features, really the standout here is base grade. And I think the easiest way to show this is to just do a couple grades, and you can see hopefully how easy the workflow is. The other thing I'll quickly note about this is just some sort of expectations and limitations of the plugin itself. So if you have physical control surfaces, this plugin is not for you. If you have a super high amount of shots that you do, this plugin is definitely not for you. And if you have more advanced uses, like you need to do power windows or advanced sort of grading on very custom things, the Node is not for you at all. With that said, let me grade a few clips, and as you see me go through these, you can make the decision if this is something that might be interest of you. So starting off with this clip here, again, it's Alexa 65. We have tons of dynamic range. If I look at my waveform, we are not clipping anywhere here. But when we apply either the technical LUT or power grade, it does push our items off. And so it'd be tempted in our control surfaces, let me make this full screen here, to drop our gain down so that we actually bring this back. And we certainly could do that. The downside, of course, is now we're underexposed in the foreground. And so part of what is so great about the base grade feature is you click this and it's going to examine the scene in real time and it's going to suggest a grade to start from. And in this case, it does this. So it hasn't gone fully compressed up top, but you notice that we're still pretty dark up here. So how do you actually use this? Well, there is this bias control underneath in the same section. The idea here is you can now move this up or down to sort of bias this grade in one direction or the other. And all it's really doing is just adjusting your lift, gamma, and gain all at once, so you don't have to do 3 individual controls. And the way I've been finding works best is I will take sort of what I want my midpoints to be, and I'll put it there, and then I will adjust my gain and my lift to match accordingly. Now, once I move this bias, you don't want to move it, or I should say, once you adjust lift, gamma, and gain separately, you generally don't want to touch bias because it'll reset your controls. Probably adjust this at some future point with a feature update, but for right now, it's more like a one-time control to see if you can, dial in something. At this point then, this may be exactly what I want. This is sort of like not the most interesting lighting, but our skin tones are good, exposure is fine. Maybe I'd say this is good. We'll return to this shot though when we talk about creative grades in just a second, but just sort of keep this in mind as far as the default goes. For this shot, I'm going to get a little bit more creative. So here we have this beautiful sunset. When we apply OneGrade, it's going to do the base technical conversion over to a sort of linear color space. In this case, we have Rec 2100PQ as our default, though do note that you can change any of these at any point to experiment to see if one of these matches better. In my experience, though, Rec 2100PQ is just so good that I almost never change it. Now, that said, if we do a base grade, it's once again going to try to squeeze your image into the appropriate bounds of the scene that it's in, but you're always going to have to do some tweaking, either with the bias control or with your lift, gamma, and gain. So in this case, I'll start off where I want my midtones, and then I'll make the sunset a little bit brighter, drop my lift down, because what I want to do is sort of turn these people more into silhouettes. And with just a few tweaks, I can get something that looks pretty good. Now, one of the nice things about this plugin is that you do have this balance control, which is using, again, advanced math to sort of create a more accurate representation of shifting colors than the default controls. And because I know these controls, I know that the top one, offset temp, is what controls your blue and red. And so what I can do is I can add just a touch of offset temp and the negative that is going towards the blue, and I can bring out the watercolor. So watch what happens when I sort of toggle this. It adds just a little bit more separation. And at this point, I'm actually pretty happy with that. Maybe a little bit more gain. That looks pretty good. This shot right here is interesting. Bright sky, again, shows off the Alexa 65's incredible dynamic range. So I'll do a base grade when we're looking directly in the sun. However, usually when I'm grading this type of footage, I'm going to want to pick a hero image and use a base grade off of that. So this, again, is dynamic. So if I click base grade here, it's going to grade for this. So one of the workflows I'll use is pick my hero image, start with the base grade, and then adjust my bias to see if there's any fine controls that this gets me. And then from there, I'll do my fine controls using, again, my lift, gamma, and gain right here. Now, again, we have other controls that we can use. So in this case, we have a density slider, which adds more color to a scene. I can add that. And we could do a little offset temp into the blue to add a little bit of teal in the shadows, but because this is a pretty bright shot, you'll notice it doesn't have nearly the effect that our other shots did. And so what I would do in this particular case is I'd use my gain temp to actually add a little bit of separation in the snow. Now, we're not saying this is correct at all, but watch what happens. I'll add just a little bit of yellow in the snow, and now we have sort of like a teal and yellow thing going on, which I think adds just a little bit more dynamism to the scene. Again, no right or wrong answers here, but that's what I've done in this case. Finally, for this shot, this is a great example of why I like to use the creative grade. So again, I drag my OneGrade, grab OneGrade on here. Base grade does a pretty good job in addition to bias, where I might say this is actually what I want. But what my favorite thing to do is, especially in these sort of lot of mid-tone scenes, is use creative grade straight out of the box. Base grade is going to examine our scene and try to compress all of its dynamic range in one area, but it's not actually using LUTs, right? So it's sort of giving you a clean slate that should be fairly representative to what your camera was. If I do creative grade, however, this actually applies a film look LUT, in this case Kodak 2383. I actually can warm this up by using the D55 version. And now you have this sort of really easy to manage base grade only in the creative side, where you could just, again, with a few adjustments, create a really compelling look. So again, no right or wrong answers here, but very quick to get really nice results. So let me revisit this shot real quick, because as we've now seen, we have this ability to use the bypass controls here. Let me just reset this into our base grade again, just so you could see this from scratch. I can use offset temp to push a little bit of teal into my shadows. And I think this already sort of adds a little bit of interest to the scene, because again, it's adding separation. But again, I can add gain tint to add a little bit of yellow to the scene. And I could do like add a scene white balance to make it more look like a sunset shot right here. Or I can cool it down to do more of like a morning scene. Really, the sort of look is up to me here. I can do things that way, or I can use the creative grade, and that gives me a slightly brighter scene to start with. I use my gain to drop it down, and now I sort of have that classic film emulation look instead. And again, I'm certainly able to change my gain settings, etc., to get the look that I want. So just want to kind of point that out, that it's really easy using the plugin to experiment with looks. And I think that's one of its greatest strengths, is it allows you to change really big sweeping settings that are then easy to undo, like your camera sort of style, with then just a click of a button, and then revert and try other settings that you want. So yeah, that is version 1.3.0 of OneGrade. Please check it out, download, let me know any feature requests in the GitHub repository or the video comments or wherever you happen to find this. So thanks so much for watching.